What's an
Well,
example?
I think the purpose of government is to promote virtue in the citizens. It's not for each individual to do as they will. And that's the kind of the fundamental idea of individualism once we get into humanism. You see, with humanism, you see, the monolithic Leviathan we live in today.
Before we throw around words and terms, can we define this shit first? I'm a little stupid. So
what was the word I just said? No, I'll define it. What word are we looking for?
Humanism.
Okay, so humanism is another term, secular humanism. Humanism, as you saw like the Renaissance with the art, is that you find humanity in just man as he is and not man as in like the image of God, kind of like the Christian ideal. And so the idea is man finds meaning in himself or himself. It's basically a type of a form of nominalism. You think of Sartre, I believe he said that. He says that, I believe, existence precedes essence, and that's what I disagree with. I think essence is there, but so the kind of like the postmodern idea that man is this atomized individual in this world, a non-place, and they find their own meaning, right? It's up to each individual to find their own meaning, who they are in themselves, and it is a existentialist problem, I think, that the Enlightenment has created for man, where with humanism, it basically thinks that there is more freedom and a greater identity in man by straying away from this kind of objective order, this non-nominalistic order, in, say, a more orthodox conception of man as a made an image of God. And the idea is like, no, because we create our own images, we create our own definitions of who we are. And that is that humanism that should be rejected.
I think there's a huge danger in believing that the government is supposed to be directing, I forget the exact words you use, but
directing individual morality.
Yeah. I mean, why would morality not come from culture?
Yeah. Oh, well, I believe in this new absolutist idea where power is above culture. Culture just doesn't exist. Culture is created by power. And so the government, as in the power,
would that not be immediately?
Okay,
Would that not be immediately disproven by the fact that there are people with no power that have their own culture?
No. So here's a great example. A good example would be, I know it's going around living in America. If you guys are in Canada or Europe, you might have the same thing. Maybe not in Sweden. But I noticed there's a new culture. There's a new culture in America. Everywhere I go, people are wearing masks. And now, not just doctors' masks, but now they're wearing their own masks. Maybe masks with like their favorite comic book hero, mask of their culture, or maybe a political message. And so I think that with masks, there's a new culture of mask wearing, and now people have made it personalized.
Those are called pussies. Sorry.
Okay, and I'm not going to disagree with you there. And my point I'm making
I've just been standing for too long, man. I'm sorry. Keep going.
There's a new culture, but where did it come from? Because last time I remember, the only people I saw wearing masks before COVID were people from Asia, going back maybe a decade. But
actually, fucking annoy the shit out of me. You went to the mall like pre-COVID. Yep. Fucking douchebags just walking around with like their Yeezys and wearing like masks. Like, what are you doing? Fucking moron. That was the thing. It pissed me off. Like, you're in CVS, sir. You are fine. Sorry, go ahead.
But you know, what I'm scared of is this the new TSA? You know, is this the new TSA where even when COVID disappears, mask wearing is a permanent culture. And this is a culture, but where did the culture come from? Now, you can't say a bunch of Americans decided, I want to be safe, but we're going to wear a mask. And that was like this grassroots idea of the American people. What happened was
it was brainwashing propaganda. So we got to fight them back with our propaganda.
But I'm saying it's the government literally said, you have to legally wear a mask. And if you go into a business, a building like a CVS or a Walgreens, you must legally wear a mask. And because it was legally imposed by the government from the top down, even if COVID disappears, the measures are still there, and that's the new culture. You see,
there's no doubt you're right that culture is impacted by power, but I don't believe that it is always paired with it. I mean, there's obvious examples of culture that arise from poor, powerless people, and then it gets co-opted by the powerful, but it has its own origin. People are creating culture at all levels of power structure. So
we're doing it right now, son.
But the dominant culture is created by
Okay,
sovereign.
that's fair. Dominant culture, I would agree, is largely dictated by the powerful. That's probably true.
And
I would want to. Or go ahead.
Yeah, no, you could keep going.
Yeah, but hold on. I thought it was more.
Psyop.
I thought it was more morality and not just culture. You were going a bit more extreme earlier.
Okay, so my definition was a definition of government. The government exists to promote virtue in the populace. That was my simple definition.
Is that what you want
virtue
government
is a little
to be
too
doing?
generous.
Well, it's not that I want government to do. I think that's just the inherent nature of government, whether it denies it or not.
Okay.
That's
I mean, the type of virtues that it promotes are like patriotism and and submission
and
xenophobia.
Absolutely. So this is what I mean. What I mean is government, whether it affirms it or denies it, promotes these values, as Theo just said.
I think that's
government supports patriotism and xenophobia, and a lot of Americans think that. But here's the thing: would they have thought that if it wasn't for the government making that happen? I say it does. And so the cathedral, I think is a better word. I think I'm sorry, is Geo still here? But I like to use the word the cathedral. Yeah. Okay, well, founded by Moldbug. Mencius Moldbug, as he did, call it the cathedral. And so it's kind of like the government plus corporations plus the mass media. Basically, the entire Bugman order is the cathedral. And so the cathedrals move in a certain way. For example, the cathedral all hate, say, Donald Trump, and they all hate the American working class, for example. And so the cathedral promote culture that Americans will follow. And so the typical American you see in the street, not even the American, because there's so many satellite states in the world today that are basically under the influence of America, such as Canada. It's like the #1 country I could think of. And so, yeah, the government imposes it upon people, such as color revolutions. I mean, that's kind of the story of America, Cold War to the present day, right?
Okay, I want to reframe this in a different way. I don't know.
Oh, wait, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can hear
you.
Welcome back. Welcome back, bud.
I just had to sign in. I had to fucking reboot my computer. I don't know. Fuck.
Oh, lovely. Well, at least your mic's working now. I want to reframe this in a way. I don't know how much. I'm not entirely sure how much I agree with the idea that culture comes from the government necessarily. I would rather frame this in the sense that I think government, a legitimate authority, has an obligation to represent and uphold the morality and culture of the people it resides over.
I think that's a good one. I think that's a good phrasing. Yeah.
I think you just run into danger when you entrust the government with that responsibility. It's such a.
Well, that's what it's there for, I think.
Well, I'm not disagreeing that that's the general concept behind government. I'm just saying that there is a real danger in having government, which is created of other people with other ideas, being responsible for the morality of all of the rest of us.
But that's how it always works.
It's circular, but it's circular logic. How
it works.
How can these people have better morality than the individuals that they govern, or why?
They're supposed to represent it in the way that they govern. I'm not saying they necessarily have better. The idea, at least we were talking about this earlier with more, we were talking about monarchy, but let's just say authoritarian regimes in general. The idea is that they have power because of the people residing underneath them kind of allow them in a certain sense. Monarchs and authoritarians in general, they can easily be deposed if they're acting outside of the morality and culture that they're supposed to be representing. Whereas under democracies and representative forms of government, the power is more distributed and it's harder to find where these problems are arising when they're getting corrupted and kind of acting outside of the realms that they're supposed to be protecting.
I would say easier. I would say easier to deal with.
We cave in and we kneel and we give them the right to protect our rights, but that is a submissive thing that happens, and we are also basically it's like their power. Like it is sticky to us in the sense that we're attracted to the welfare state, like Social Security and just all these like benefits. And so that is also a way that they have the stranglehold over us, is essentially the welfare state, and the people at the top of the political class benefit from it really most. And again, this all just circles back of just like the ease of money, because the ones that are, the most politically connected are, I mean, like that is the only way that the welfare state thrives, is because the easy access to money and the nonstop money printing, and having the lender of last resort, and benefiting the rich corporations or their favorites.
You said lender of last resort. That's a funny term.
But even
the lender of last resort, yeah.
But even in the case that the money problem will be solved, the concern is still that, I'm still a believer in the phrase, people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And I think that most of the ideas that people have, like if you look at any election map, you're going to have blue areas, you're going to have red areas. And it's very rare to find areas that are going to be very mixed. And I think most people are going to be drawn to particular ideas based on how they grew up, based on the circle of people they've been around. And that's why I think that they're always going to be influenced by something. And when we do have this technological situation today with iPads, with any device that kind of indoctrinates people into the lowest common denominator, most people into the lowest common denominator, then how would we overcome this impending idiocracy that I think may be coming our way?
That's when you walk away from the idiocracy.
Well, you can walk away from it. You can walk away from it. It doesn't mean 90% of the people are going to walk away from it.
You can,
and like it or not, you're going to be stuck with those 90%. They're still.
What does that matter? Like, what is stopping? What is stopping them from
individual with just like your own agency that doesn't affect anyone else? You live in a society.
What is stopping them from knowing the things that we know?
A lot of different factors. How they ended up growing up. How they grew up, and like a lot of, for example, Russian people, the reason why they are as they are had to do with them being enslaved for centuries by the Golden Horde, very different from the Ukrainian people. I am not a believer that you're a clean slate when you're born. I think it's a mix of nature and nurture, and I think for the majority of the people that have ever existed on the earth, they're of course going to be influenced by various factors, and the easier it's going to be to get to the lowest common denominator, like the closer you'd have access to technology that'll fulfill any desire you happen to have, the more inclined I think people are going to be. I mean, I don't think this is a controversial thing. The more inclined people are going to be to sit around and to do drugs and to do mind drugs, which I think the internet, Instagram, and all this stuff is, and the less they're going to be able to get to the point of having something to challenge them and get to a higher level of existence. Because I think mostly it has been us fighting against nature that has resulted in us being where we are right now, and we seem to be going into the position of the last man that Nietzsche talked about, the majority of the people, and you're stuck with that majority. Like, what are we going to do there?
Another way to frame
but you
this
can't
is
protect them from themselves. Like,
why not?
And they still have the freedom and optionality that we do. They still have
freedom is a strong word for what their options are. From birth, they're basically targeted with advertising and propaganda from the media, from corporations, from schooling to pacify themselves and to buy into the system.
So are all of us.
And so was Buddha. Buddha, well, he was influenced by the fact that he was living in a very wealthy environment, yet he had some spark in him that got him to get out of there and to seek something higher. Most people didn't do what the Buddha did, who were in that position of wealth and luxury. So it still comes down to, when most people do have these creature comforts, not everyone is going to have a family that's going to emphasize how important it is for them to, seek to be in a position of self-made discomfort in order to grow, which is something that I think a lot of, let's say, royal families emphasize. For example, Napoleon, who came from minor nobility, he got sent to this very Spartan camp for kids where he had to sleep on a fucking stone bed, in order to get stronger. I think that did influence him in some way. Same thing with any ritual you would have to go from boy to man. All these rituals, I think, did emphasize this need to transcend this bondage that we have, this bondage of desire. So when we're talking about freedom, I think it's very important to keep in mind freedom from one's desires and what that situation looks like in the years to come. But
it should also be.
I know, but whatever their desires are going to be their desires, and you can't stop that.
Where we are is not the default state of people. It takes a lot of effort and education, and like you have to actually physically try to be where we are right now. We spend all of our time thinking about these things and talking about these things.
Yeah, but what are y'all trying to do? Y'all are selling to like progressives. Like it's your responsibility to go fucking save these people from themselves. Like that's what I'm hearing.
A good government cares about its citizens. A good person cares about his countrymen.
Then there is no such thing as a good government.
Yeah, but we don't have that, and we will never have that, except maybe at a
local
level.
The goal is to move towards a system that prioritizes that instead of the well-being of some stupid multinational corporation that doesn't believe in the same things we do.
Well, here's what we did have. Here's what we did have, just real quick. What we did have were people who were, let's say, the most important in their village or town or city, who had Rotary clubs, who had various organizations that were the pillars of the community, and they did care about the community. So if there was a non-governmental way of doing this, like I just mentioned, something like that I think should be encouraged. The only question is, how do you empower those type of organizations to exist in the first place if most of the people who would have been in a different time, in a different life, members of this Rotary club are playing Fortnite right now?
There you go.
I don't know, but I do know that
that's still their fucking choice to play Fortnite.
There's a lot of corporations that
Fortnite.
There's a lot of corporations that have similar beliefs to me, and I don't have any governments that do. So I don't understand the consistent railing against corporations as if the very existence of them is evil. And I know there's many in here that feel that way. So I don't know if it was Hero that was talking, but I'd love to hear why.
Yeah, I think
almost no corporation share our beliefs. I hate to say it.
Or go ahead, Gio.
No, I was going to say almost no corporations really like share our beliefs anymore. Like, I mean, let's face it, the vast majority of them
is that they all have incentives, and their incentives are corrupted because when you're a corporation and you get to a large enough size, regulations and regulators give you the Eye of Sauron. So the decisions that you make are economic in the sense that you have to do this or suffer the consequences.
But you're framing this in the sense that you're framing this in the sense that it's. You're framing this in the sense that it's purely the fault of the state that they're like this. I think it lies much more heavily on their desire to, strip people of their own morality so that they can buy into their own products.
I don't follow. How are they stripping people of their morality? By offering a product.
They have the incentives to make products, and maybe they strip people out of their morality as like a second effect, but I don't think that really happens until they actually become like a corporatocracy and are being watched by the Eye of Sauron of the state, or they just have to abide by these new rules because they've gotten so large or whatever. But I don't think actual corporations succeed when they have the first intention to purposefully try to strip people from their humanities or whatever the fuck you said.
Their goal is to sell you the product by any means necessary, and when the state steps in, they hate it.
That's totally not true. They love it when the state steps in.
In certain circumstances, but in terms of being able to sell you their product by any means necessary,
what is this by
any means necessary isn't an option until the state comes in.
That's not true.
What do you mean by any means necessary? I don't follow. They want to sell their product.
Aggregation shit?
No, their constant use of propaganda through psychological advertisements and marketing. I think it's absolutely abhorrent.
We'll take something like
Roundup, that power and reach doesn't come easy. It comes when the state comes in.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, to be fair here,
then they're not that successful or threatening of a company.
Okay, to be fair here, in the progressive era, that was the time when you did have a lot of these monopolies that were conjoined together with the government, which allowed them to stay in power for as long as they did. And when we're talking about various farm subsidies today, like corn subsidies, a lot of that factors in to the shitty diet that the Americans have because Americans pay their taxes, which then go into these companies that create all this genetically modified crap that the Americans end up eating. Now, that being said...
By fiat money, I may add.
Yes, well, that being said, let's say all of that goes away, you're still going to have the problem that I mentioned before, which I think goes beyond talk of, certain political systems. But it basically
all that goes away
about,
if there's a sound money system that doesn't fuck with people's incentives.
Sure, but beyond
and the only reason why this progresses is because money is so cheap and easy.
Yes, but beyond the sound money system, we're still going to have, I know, bless me, we're still going to have technology making it a lot easier for people to not do anything all day. And that's the real issue, I think, when it comes to one of the biggest challenges we're going to have in the 21st century.
But Lev, is there anything other than a cultural fix to that?
Let them do nothing all day.
Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, let me reframe this question so we're on the same page when I'm talking about what the problem with these corporations are. Do you think it's the fault of the state that OnlyFans targets their advertising to 16-year-old girls?
No.
That's what I'm referring to when I'm saying they're what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they have a demographic.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Fucked. That's evil.
Okay.
No, it's not. You have an audience. Your audience is a demographic.
Yeah, the state is
you market to your demographic.
Gio, jump in the ring and knock everyone out. Take over the conversation, Gio. Jump into the ring.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Gio.
Oh fuck! I finally.
Hey, Gio.
The computer, the MacBook fucking gods finally did it for me. So I think the problem is that it's rather what Hero is trying to say, from what I gather, and my lines are being crossed here. From what Hero is saying, it's not so much. It's not so much corporations trying to sell you something. It's rather the nature of commodification itself is the problem, because commodification bleeds into every single social interaction. And the reason corporations have more power is partly because of the money system, but it's more intangible than that. Techno-capital works in such a way where the centralization of all life into the hands of corporate elites are precisely due to the commodification model of capital itself, because capital always has to expand infinitely into the
commodification model.
No, but exactly, into the virtual space as well. So
No. Define commodification model. What the fuck does that mean?
Well, everything is a consumable good to be bought and sold at the right price. There's also
not everything.
That's just the root of capitalism. What's inherently evil about that?
That's the problem with modern capital to begin with, because now our very subjectivity itself is bought and sold. Why do you think corporations, people talk about woke capital? The final marriage of capital and leftist politics were inevitable because that sort of old school anti-capitalist Soviet model was obsolete. Power works now through the commodification of subjectivity. And so now, why do you think every corporation is in lockstep supporting a lot of these causes that we find abhorrent? Is because it's not just the fact that they're incentivized. A lot of times they're de-incentivized, but why do they still do it? It's because the system that they want to create, the human subject that the corporatocracy wants to invent, is amicable to their final end of creating a whole subsidiary race of consumers. And the problem is, unfortunately, libertarianism is not very well equipped to address the very intangible problem of corporate power actually crafting not just politics, but
a
identity
of its
itself.
ideology.
And so I think that's what
corporate power is nothing without the state.
The implication.
Well, yeah, of course,
is not about the state.
Yeah, they've given corporations. Corporations are not just like a standalone thing. The state is obviously involved, but it's rather a transnational conglomeration that is more important than any one particular state.
Yeah, I'm not saying the state isn't involved with them and doesn't give them, carte blanche to do this. I'm saying that my biggest problem with this, and I think where your ideology fails to address it, is the idea that, these corporations have so much power. Because they have so much power, they're able to influence media and education and all of these things to remove the values of the people and make them
Guys, I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is you're leaving out the first step in this, and that is that the corporations couldn't get to this level of power without government. So that's the whole argument, is that yes, corporate power paired with government power creates all of these knock-on effects that we all find problematic. I'm just saying, what is it about the free exchange of goods and the commodification, as you phrased it, that is inherently evil if you don't have government involved? If you can explain that to me, you might be able to convert me.
If I could maybe throw my 2 cents into this, is sure. I need to read more of him. I think someone like maybe Gio or maybe Lev's familiar with him. Actually, Peter Thiel was, he considers him to be his mentor, Rene Girard, and he's a pretty popular philosopher, not super popular, but he's a pretty known philosopher of mimesis theory. And so basically, too long didn't read, humans follow models. Like children, they imitate models. And so in human society, we're looking for the proper role models. We have great role models today, like Cardi B, Kim Kardashian, and Paris Hilton. And so we want to imitate models like that. And where I fundamentally disagree with capitalism is the idea that, so there's a market that offers goods and people, individuals in society, because I think capitalism is inherently paraliberalism in the sense that it follows that framework of individualism, right? And so individuals want a product. And so if you have the market unencumbered by, say, government interference or basically laissez-faire, hands off, the owner, the business or corporation that provides the best product wins out in this competition, this arena, so to speak. And so people have desires. The best merchant provides the best product for what the people want, and that's kind of what wins out. And so it kind of causes a flourishing of the marketplace. But I would say, kind of like mimesis theory, I don't agree with the idea of people want a product, people want desires. Obviously, we need something like food and water to survive. All humans need food and water. But desires are created. And I think, ironically, the existence of advertisement, someone in the chat was really railing really hard on advertisements. I think it was Hero. I think advertisements should be banned. I think they're extremely manipulative. I'm 100% on Hero here.
Thank you.
Wow.
And,
wow.
And
okay, I'm going to step in right now if that's okay.
After
so
you
the whole desire thing.
Phil, after you step in, I'm going to introduce Charlemagne, but go for it.
Okay. Yeah, the whole thing of desires being created, that's called innovation. And also people have preference or subjective value. So that is one thing that you totally overlooked from the whole Misesian theory. Subjective value drives people's incentives and choice. And
what's influencing their value?
Banning advertising
what's influencing
in the
their
first
value?
place. What?
What's influencing their value? It's
Whatever
not
the
just
fuck
their
they
own.
want.
No, it isn't. They're being advertised to. Their values are being advertised to.
I would have wanted an iPad regardless of
good
how great the ad
advertising is
campaign was.
innovative.
It's a
Are
fucking
you gonna
great
stop
product.
innovation?
Yes.
All right,
You're stop innovation.
Okay, let's go to Charlemagne. So Charlemagne, a newcomer to BTR, can you first tell us a little bit about yourself, and then since I think you have been following the advertising conversation so far, I would love to get your take on that.
Yeah, hello. So yeah, I saw your tweet on Twitter, and I just decided to pop in. So I'm a YouTuber, neo-reactionary YouTuber. People might know my videos on Mencius Moldbug and other ideas sort of adjacent to that mode of thought. I hang out on Academic Agents streams a lot lately. I actually just came from one while you guys were going by the looks of it. So yeah, if you want to check out my content, feel free to do that on YouTube. It seems like neo-reactionary thought is kind of penetrating into the right wing a bit more lately in our online circles. I don't know exactly what I just walked into, but sounds like you guys are discussing things related to the nature of control. You were talking about advertisements. Someone mentioned actually banning them. Let's see, you asked me about advertisements just now. And in my opinion, advertisements are pretty terrible. I mean, I think outright banning them would be totally infeasible. But advertisement has always really rubbed me the wrong way. It seems quite satanic, to be honest, in the way it manipulates people into
ding.
It manipulates people to have desires in very insidious ways, and I think that's what really bothers most people about advertisements is not just the sort of shilling. I don't think people really mind blatant shilling that much if you're just trying to get someone to buy a product in a very honest way, but it's really the insidious nature about how these things work, especially when paired to technology. Advertisements are amplified by computing technology and online advertisement in these ways that sort of go beyond actual human control. I actually kind of view advertising as a sort of a demon, honestly, that exists within cyberspace.
I'm not a huge fan of advertising. I'm just trying to understand what about it. I mean, what is the counter proposal here? I mean, you've already admitted that banning it would be unfeasible. So what are you advocating for?
I'm not sure what you guys are discussing in terms.
So there's a problem. What's the solution?
Yeah. What is the solution here? I agree there are some nefarious aspects to advertising.
Absolutely.
I'm not a huge fan. I fast forward as much as I possibly can. But there's an entire business model. Television, live sports, movies, all sorts of shit is all funded based off of advertising. Podcasts, for instance, that we all benefit from. So I'm just curious. There's a lot of benefit that is not being discussed, like podcasts that we get unbelievable information now basically for free, and we just have to fast forward through a couple advertisements here and there. I mean, there are benefits to this business model, and you guys have pointed out some of the negatives. I'm asking, what's the alternative?
I would say the alternative is, there's basically a market opportunity here for advertisement free, whatever type of content you're listening.
Right, and that's subscription models, which people don't sign up for often.
I would say there should be regulations against certain types of psychological marketing. I wouldn't ban advertisements outright, because I think just blanket, normal, hey, here's my product, it's good. I think that's fine. I think certain types of psychological marketing should be regulated against.
What if people choose not to comply?
The best marketing only happens because those corporations, as I was saying, become so successful and have access to the technology of whether it be data scraping or whatever the best algorithm is. And those are pretty much, Facebook, whatever. It's all status intervention. Like, you don't get the good shit without some state intervention. So you're not going to stop that. And if you want to pass some regulation to say what you can and cannot do when it comes to starting your own business, you're really crushing innovation, and you're also crushing the things that could actually come.
I care much more about morality than I do about innovation.
Well, I think
innovation
on the regulation point
creates morality.
I want to hear from Ali.
You don't create morality. Morality is a thing that exists pre that.
Hold on, Ali. You've been very patient with us, so let us know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Phil on this. Like, I think a lot of it comes back to the state, and the whole other thing is your problem with corporations about morality, but we have public schools that are basically shaping it for the government. Like, so for me, like, I have
a problem with that too.
I don't think. I think corporations likely you would not see them in the way that you do now without the state involvement. And corporatism is very different from free markets, which is what we currently have. Is corporatism.
So we also have a comment from a series of comments from our great patron Aman Sadhu, and this would be the opportunity for me to remind all the new people who are just tuning in right now, subscribe to Break the Rules. We are the greatest, most
stop your advertising
YouTube show in all of YouTube history. We are the best, we are the greatest, and we are growing at an exponential rate. So fuck advertising, but not our advertising. We're the best. Anyway, go to patreon.com/breaktherules.
Love's got a fans only. Check it out.
Yes, I do. Go to patreon.com/breaktherules. If you go there, $20 patrons get an exquisite print from the great Giovanni Panicetti. And anyway, subscribe, all the new people. Thank you so much for watching. And here is Aman Sadhu, who's one of our great patrons' comments. Subscription model is the go-to of every business, of every info business right now. You filter out most and get high value customers who will rebuy many times. Lose money up front, get profit back end. How else? How will people speak of ads without understanding the business? Okay, so Wong Kar Wai Superfan XOXOXO says innovation exists without business. Aman says, is true, innovation comes less from profit drive rather than personal drive. Profit drive usually leads to what people call here grifters. So there we go. That's what Aman has to say.
Wait, say that last part. Was he basically arguing that personal drive leads to profit drive?
Innovation comes less from profit drive rather than personal drive.
Wow.
Okay, yeah.
It's just not true.
No, I like that because innovation occurs when you have a problem. So you create something that solves that problem and you sell it.
Yeah, but if it requires a ton of capital to create that fix, you're not going to get it if there isn't a profit at the end of the road, because people aren't going to just do that out of their passion. So I'm sorry, it's just not true. We absolutely have to have profit at the end of the rainbow. Otherwise, the pursuit won't be there to get to the biggest fixes, not easy shit where you can just be like, oh, I want to do a podcast about this. I'm talking about like real big solutions and fixes.
Now,
and innovation.
Hero was saying that the innovation should be stifled in times where the government decides that innovation is not good. Was I hearing you correctly, Hero?
That's a way to put it if you want to phrase it that way.
Oh, well, we also have another comment here. So Aman says, nah, personal drive causes innovation. Innovation is much harder to make profit from. Easy to make profit from other people's innovations.
I fucking like this guy.
He's great. He's one of our patrons. What's not to like? Based
Good.
Aman. Yes.
I'm not gonna attack your patron.
Based on best advertising.
I'm not gonna attack your patron, but I totally disagree. I mean, we all see problems and we all try to innovate and fix things. Not all, but many of us. But the truth is, if it's a big enough problem, it's going to require capital investment in order to see it to its fruition. So, sorry.
Unless if you can like just find a cheap solution and undercut the competition somehow.
Of course, if it's a cheap solution, that's different.
No, overall, I do agree with Liberty Lockdown. I do think that, but I agree with Liberty Lockdown where there needs to be a pot of gold at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the rainbow. And so what is selected?
Magically delicious.
So what I'll say is what power selects to be relevant, they will then fund money towards that. For example, say you're a natural athlete.
Wait, who's they?
The power as in like the sovereign. So, but
the state,
besides that point, correct. But besides that point, I will say, like, for example, say you're a talented athlete, and if you're good enough to be in the NFL with your natural athleticism, there's just so much money in the NFL. These guys are millionaire athletes. And so what I'm saying is, say if a guy could use his talents and he's good enough to be in the NFL, he wouldn't be in, say, the Army, right? I mean, there's a PT requirement to be in the Army, but if you're that talented to be in NFL, I would say 99% of the time someone would rather be in NFL than the Army. A great example is Pat Tillman. And I think it's an inversion, but it's a whole other topic. Example is, if you guys know who Pat Tillman is, he was a very talented athlete, I think from Arizona. And he got into the NFL because he was good enough to be in the NFL. And then he left the NFL to join the Army. And people thought this was very patriotic and very commendable of him. Unfortunately, Pat Tillman died in a friendly fire incident. But my point I'm making is this interesting because Pat Tillman was talented enough as an athlete to be in the NFL, which is like 0.1% of people in the world are that talented. And yet he decided to go to the Army, where obviously he has a huge pay decrease. But I would say overall, there's a mechanism that selects for talent, and talent is pulled into different fields. So whether you're an e-gamer, professional athlete, talented businessman, where the money is, it funnels talents to specific areas of society. And so, yes, I do think the monetary incentive is very big. And people say, well, we could, like, for example, look at how much talent is in the NBA versus slam ball, right? How much revenue comes from slam ball? Maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. The NBA is a multi-million-dollar or maybe billion-dollar industry.
Well, they haven't been having a good year. But that's besides the point.
I know. Absolutely. But for example, if you're good enough an athlete to be in the NBA, why would you develop all your skills in the sport slam ball? Can someone really say, well, I love slam ball more than basketball, and let's say you're good enough to be in the NBA? I highly doubt anyone's going to be in slam ball, which is more for like second tier athletes, right? And I think that simple athletic model kind of goes to Liberty Lockdown. That's why I do think that money incentive is very important, and it's more than just, say, passion. Even the great inventors, I think, needed sponsorship, right? Like
Tesla. Tesla had JP Morgan as one of his later sponsors.
Exactly. Another example is he just died recently, but Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther actor, what he said, I owe everything to Denzel Washington because he went to school for acting and he was knee deep in debt. And basically he sought out, these actors saw that Chadwick Boseman was a very talented actor. So they said to Denzel Washington, you should pay off his student loans, pay off his debt. And that's what Denzel Washington did. And so what would Chadwick Boseman be if it wasn't for this A-list top king of Hollywood, basically? Denzel Washington's like definitely a tier A-list actor. And Chadwick Boseman's a great actor too. Sad that he died, but he needed that patron, right? And that is money.
But without talking about something like the government, for instance, like again, to the point that Ali was talking about and what Phil was mentioning, if we were to get rid of all of these government influences, let's just throw them in the trash for now. Let's pretend we're living in this libertarian post-government world. What would be, and I want to turn this back to Charlemagne, what would be some of the things that, let's say, wouldn't be artificially empowered, like the corn subsidies, for instance, by the government, but would still be something that would cause a lot of problems for people that would be living in this society?
Well, I mean, one thing that wouldn't happen is some sort of instant utopia, right? I mean, for my part, one of the things I tend to focus on are just the ideological problems within what we call the Cathedral and the Neo-reactionary circles. I think that was mentioned earlier, but this is so. You know, what's happened is, although a lot of the progressive realignment of corporations was pushed there through government regulation and law about, you know, hiring certain people and all of these, you know, essentially race laws that define how corporations sort of act, and the destruction of freedom of association, right?
Age of Entitlement. Just wanted to give that shout out for that book.
All of that is now baked into the ideology of the people running these corporations now. So even if you removed the government somehow, let's just say you snap your fingers, all these people wouldn't simply stop behaving that way, right? So I think you guys mentioned the cultural problem a bit further on. I think the problems we're seeing in society now stem far beyond the government itself, and it's sort of the entire ideology that's been instituted, you know, throughout everyone in the nation, basically. So you wouldn't get rid of progressive politics, if that's your concern, by simply removing the government. Although I think that is a step towards building a society in which is just frankly governed a bit more sensibly. You would need to institute some sort of new place where corporations can exist without these laws in place to build up something. But simply removing the government isn't going to just make all of that go away. It also isn't going to unseat.
Yeah, exactly. I think.
Hey, there you are.
It doesn't get rid of progressivism, but doesn't it take its power away?
Yes, but
by the way, I don't think anyone's advocating for a utopia, because that's just fucking.
No, guys, listen. What I wanted to, now that we have Charlemagne, because Charlemagne, I would consider a mold bug expert. So I want to ask. The original prompt of the show was absolutism or neo-reaction versus libertarianism. And the really basic question would be, and again, years ago, I wrote this piece where I said that, Moldbug is in some ways, he's similar to Michel Foucault. But where do you stand, Charlemagne, in this debate between the idea of a libertarian framework versus a neo-absolutism or a reactionary framework? Now, I do agree the power, I guess this is the main contention, is the decentralization of power, the diffusion of power throughout society. So what would you say about that?
I mean, I think any of those systems can be legitimate if people choose to live in them. Given the right monarch, I would choose to live in an absolutist monarchy. Right now, I'm looking at the problem of sovereignty. I think the key problem that we're facing right now is, in order to do anything that we want, we have to figure out how to get sovereignty. And I think the only real way to do that is through some sort of libertarian project at the moment. I mean, and that
Not
is
even, dude. It's called crypto anarchy. I shared a piece in the whole Zoom chat. I think everyone here should go read. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's a really important piece. Eric Kaysen is a genius. He mentions Foucault and a bunch of great stuff. I really encourage you all to read that piece. Sorry, continue. I'll shut up.
We got to get you on the Discord, by the way, so that way I don't have to copy and paste.
Fucking fine. What's it called?
I'll send you a link right now, brother.
Jesus.
So anyway, who was talking before?
Charlemagne, finish your thought.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't actually focus too much on these really high level philosophical breakdowns of what the basis of government is, because I'm focused on a lot more of the practical problems we're facing right now. And the key problem to solve is we need to figure out how to get some form of sovereignty to actually start creating any sort of society that we want. And one of the things that I've become interested in lately is this idea of a private law society, which is basically the idea of establishing slowly free economic zones outside of the Western nations, basically, and ultimately basically purchasing sovereignty from some smaller countries, essentially. And I think that's a really good idea. I think that allows people to build the types of societies they want, right? And I tend to...
Wait, do you mean like flag theory? Like being a sovereign in different countries? Or what do you mean purchasing sovereignty from other countries? Without being like an economic hitman?
I mean, well, in some countries you can buy citizenship, right?
Okay, so flag theory, dope.
It would kind of be an extension of that. I mean, one of the private law society projects is called Prospera, which is based on the island of Roatan, which is part of Honduras. And basically what they're trying to do there is make a deal with the government such that there's basically an economic free zone. And the ultimate goal of this is to actually basically buy a country, from the government. And this can become legitimate by being internationally recognized, right?
This totally aligns with ANCAP ideology, but I've heard both you and Gio say that you're monarchist. What is it about?
Oh, I'm not a monarchist.
Oh, you aren't? Okay.
I mean, I would be comfortable.
Got a king on their avatar.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Let's be honest.
Well, all of this ist stuff, like monarchist, I just want a government that's not run by psychopaths, and I just want to live in a sane society. I mean, it's a pretty and the current way I see about doing this is basically the anarcho-capitalist way. I mean, I think sensible people just need to join together and over time build up some sensible alternative, and people will see that there are possibilities of 21st century government that are outside of these classic ways of thinking. I think one of the problems of things like monarchism is it's really stuck in the past, and you should be in a dialogue with the past, but we can't ever just go back or completely resurrect any of these systems in totality. And
true.
A monarchist system could emerge through something like private law society, totally consensually, right, through contract. And I think that would be ideal. I actually think we have this problem of the social contract, and this is one of the problems of democracy, is this thing no one agreed to. It can actually mutate. I think formalizing what your contract actually is with whatever corporate body you have, then you might call it a government. That's, I think, the real way forward. And this is basically how everyone can get what they want. If you want to live in some communist hell, basically, you can do that. And if you want to live in a sensible society, then you can form that as well. And I think the anarcho-capitalist viewpoint is actually pretty reasonable. I think a lot of people view it sort of as a meme ideology, but there is actually a lot of serious thought and things to be taken seriously in anarcho-capitalism, because I found that anarcho-capitalists, especially of the Hoppian variety, they don't want to live in some goofy left libertarian clown world, right? They actually just want basically a society built on consent and formal contracts. And many of them tend to be, very right wing and socially conservative as well. And I think
and Catholic and
right. So I don't actually view anarcho-capitalism as being, anti-right wing, because to me it seems like it might be one of the only ways at this point to actually build any sort of right-wing society, because it's literally illegal to do that in basically every country at this point.